Welcome to the explainer that reveals how a bankrupt, copycat soda recipe transformed into a ruthless, $80 billion global empire. I mean, when we look at massive brands today, we kind of just assume their rise to the top was this straight line of masterful decisions, right? But as we're about to see, the true story is infinitely more chaotic.
Okay, let's dive right into this by asking a seemingly impossible question. How on earth did a company that went totally bust, not once but twice, and practically begged Coca-Cola to buy them out, end up dominating grocery aisles all over the world? To really get it, we have to strip away all that glossy modern marketing and look at the actual numbers and some wild historical pivots.
Fast forward to today, and PepsiCo was pulling in around $80 billion of revenue a year. $80 billion! Let that sink in for a second. And what's truly staggering about that figure is that it's actually more than double what the Coca-Cola company brings in annually. Like, how was the eternal runner-up in the cola wars making twice as much money as the actual winner?
Well, if you look at their empire, it all starts to make sense. They aren't just a drinks business anymore. They're a massive, sprawling conglomerate. They are divided up into multiple heavy-hitting categories, owning everything from Gatorade and Mountain Dew to absolute snack titans like Lay's and Doritos, and even Quaker Oats. At one point, they even bought giant fast food chains. Think Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, KFC. I mean, they are literally everywhere.
But you know their origins? Completely disastrous. Let's trace this timeline back. It all starts with a pharmacist named Caleb Bradham, who invented this health drink meant to relieve indigestion back in 1892. Locals called it Brad's drink, which he very cleverly renamed Pepsi Cola in 1898, getting that from the Greek word for digestion. He actually built a thriving business for a minute, but then completely bankrupted the whole shebang by disastrously stockpiling sugar during World War I. He bought massive amounts at 22 cents a pound, totally assuming prices would keep going up. Instead, they crashed down to just 3 cents, wiping the entire company off the map in 1920.
So, get this. The crucial point here is that Pepsi was doing so terribly during the Great Depression, going bankrupt a second time under new ownership, by the way, that they tried to sell themselves to Coca-Cola on 3 separate occasions. 3 times. And Coke rejected them every single time. At the time, nobody believed Pepsi could turn their luck around, so Coke didn't even see them as a blip on the radar, let alone a threat.
Forced to fend for themselves, Pepsi made a seriously genius pivot. They stripped down their value proposition to target cash-strapped families. By using recycled beer bottles to cut their production costs, Pepsi started offering a 12-ounce bottle of soda for the exact same 5-cent price as Coke, and Coke was only offering 6 ounces. Double the soda for the exact same price? Yeah, that was a massive hit for families trying to save every penny during the Depression.
And they clawed their way back through the 1940s with a series of just incredibly smart marketing moves. During World War II, they changed their brand colors to red, white, and blue to show some patriotism. And they set up free recording booths so U.S. soldiers could send audio messages home to their families. Plus, and this was huge, while their competitors were still relying on terrible stereotypes, Pepsi made the highly successful, really progressive decision in the 1940s to market directly to the untapped African-American community. They even hired an all-black sales and marketing team to create their ads.
Section 1. Geopolitical bartering. Trading soda for Soviet vodka.
All right, let's jump to 1959 and see how this builds into one of the wildest geopolitical business deals in history. The Cold War is raging, right? And Pepsi's out there looking for massive new markets. Following an American national exhibition in Moscow, Pepsi actually became the very first American brand sold in the USSR. But there was a major hurdle. The Soviet ruble was basically worthless globally and illegal to trade internationally. So they set up this highly creative barter system. Step 1. Pepsi sends soda syrup to the Soviets. Step 2. The USSR pays them, not in cash, but in stolichnaya vodka. Step 3. Pepsi takes that vodka, sells it exclusively in the US, and converts it into hard cash. Genius. But by 1989, that vodka deal stopped making financial sense. Now, there's this famous story that the Soviet government offered to pay Pepsi with a literal fleet of decommissioned Soviet warships, including submarines and a cruiser, just to be sold for scrap metal. While the actual acquisition of the fleet eventually fell through, the negotiations were so real that a Pepsi executive famously joked to the U.S. National Security Advisor, "We're disarming the Soviet Union faster than you are."
Meanwhile, back home, Pepsi was realizing something big. People don't just buy soda, they buy soda and snacks together. This realization sparked the birth of a modern conglomerate. In 1965, Pepsi merged with the snack giant Frito-Lay to form PepsiCo.
Instead of fighting tooth and nail to enter new markets from scratch, they just combined forces, pooling their massive resources to crush smaller competition and rapidly expand all over the world.
But, expanding into literally everything sometimes creates a massive conflict of interest. When PepsiCo bought fast food chains like KFC, Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut, they forced them to only serve Pepsi, but this completely backfired on a broader scale. Why? Because rival chains like Popeyes refused to sell Pepsi products, since doing so would mean directly handing money to the massive corporation that owned KFC, their direct fast food competition.
Section 2. Mega Marketing Disasters, Deadly Glitches, and Fighter Jets.
This brings us right to the 1990s, an era totally defined by Pepsi pushing the boundaries of extreme marketing campaigns, which resulted in some absolutely catastrophic disasters. In 1992, Pepsi ran this number fever bottle cap contest in the Philippines. The grand prize was 1 million pesos, around $50,000, which was a completely life-changing amount of money over there. People were obsessed. But a computer glitch accidentally printed the winning grand prize number, 349, on over 600,000 bottle caps, instead of just 2.
Now, honoring all those winning caps, that would have cost Pepsi $30 billion. It would have bankrupted the entire global company instantly. So they announced it was a mistake and offered a tiny fraction of the prize instead. Well, the reaction was explosive. Furious consumers formed Coalition 349, and the whole situation escalated into massive, chaotic street riots where people were literally bombing Pepsi trucks. Tragically, these riots left 5 people dead.
Then, just a few years later, in 1996, another contest went terribly wrong, this time in the U.S. An absurd TV ad promised a military Harrier jet for 7 million Pepsi points. Well, a sharp business student named John Leonard did the math. You could buy Pepsi points for 10 cents each. That meant he could legally buy the required points for $700,000 to claim a military jet worth $23 million. So he got investors, raised the cash, and actually mailed in the paperwork.
Obviously, Pepsi refused to hand over a literal weapon of war, claiming the commercial was clearly just a joke. John Leonard sued them for false advertising. Ultimately, Pepsi won the case, but the court of public opinion forced them to take action. They were legally required to update the commercial, jacking up the required points to 700 million and slapping a giant "just kidding" disclaimer right on the screen.
Section 3. Losing the Cola Wars, the ultimate irony.
So, we finally arrived at the legendary Cola Wars, and how winning the battle actually lost them the war. In 1975, Pepsi daringly launched the Pepsi Challenge. They ran blind taste tests in public, pouring a cup of Coke and a cup of Pepsi, and just asking people which they preferred. The results were undeniable. Participants consistently chose the sweeter taste of Pepsi over Coca-Cola. This proved to the world that Coke's market dominance was based almost entirely on brand loyalty and legacy, rather than actually having a superior flavor.
Well, this data absolutely panicked Coca-Cola. They were so terrified of the Pepsi Challenge that in 1985, they completely changed their legendary century-old recipe to create New Coke, which was designed to taste sweeter, kind of like Pepsi. It was a total disaster. It resulted in massive, furious consumer backlash. People absolutely hated that their classic drink had been tampered with.
But right here is where it all turned around. When Coke finally gave in and reverted back to their classic formula, people were so deeply relieved that Coca-Cola's brand loyalty skyrocketed even higher than before. People just stopped talking about Pepsi's taste test victory entirely. They were just thrilled to have classic Coke back, totally overshadowing Pepsi's superior taste data.
So, think about this. After surviving double bankruptcy, nearly selling out to their rival for pennies, navigating Cold War bartering, causing literal riots, and technically losing the ultimate war of brand loyalty to Coke, Pepsi still makes $80 billion a year. We have to ask, what is the true secret ingredient that makes a modern mega brand completely indestructible? Is it the soda, the snacks, or just the sheer willpower to never stop expanding? Definitely something to think about next time you walk down the grocery aisle.